My essay is called What Martin Luther King Means to Me. For me, Martin Luther King Jr. has always represented a conflicted symbol, a person almost beyond imagination. It wasn't until high school, probably, that Dr. King became sort of real to me as a civil rights figure. Dr. King was presented as a sanitized version of his compatriot Malcolm X. We were taught that Malcolm X was a dangerous agitator, a sort of black racist, and that any genuine racial progress for African Americans would come from measures like the ones Dr. King advocated: forgiveness, nonviolence, and integration. He had won a Nobel Peace Prize. Inevitably, our teachers said African Americans would be properly integrated into white society. No mention was made of discrimination, the Klan, or even of slavery, except that they were in the past, and that Dr. King had fought against these aspects of society that used to exist. Nobody really mentioned that King sounded an awful lot like Malcolm when he worried that he was integrating his people into a burning house, or when he recognized that a riot is the language of the unheard. Back then, I recognized Dr. King as a hero. I was glad there was a day in his honor, and I was glad that he had been there to fight non-violently on the front lines so that black kids could share the cafeteria with me. But I never tangled with the ways that he would have been critical of me. If anything, the events of the last year or so suggest that the history that I received in high school suffers from a kind of amnesia, and that Dr. King's transcendent greatness has been sometimes hijacked in its service. I'm glad that our nation produced a man who could so bravely say to his enemies, "I will not hate you. I would rather die than hate you." This message is easy for all of us, but particularly for white people to remember. It resonates with us if we recognize that we might have been, or even may still be, Dr. King's implicit adversaries, invested one way or another in the classism, militarism, and consumerism that he attacked in his more radical speeches. From the vantage point of white society, it's clearly better that disenfranchised Afro-Americans practice nonviolence, that they love their enemies. After all, they might wrongly imagine us to be their enemies, and violence would be unfair to us, because we really all do try hard to be good people. For the comfort of white people like me, it's also best that this message of forgiveness comes from Dr. King, a man so far beyond us that we cannot hope to reach him, and that his message seems to focus on the desire of black people to be included in white society, rather than directing white society to actively, even bravely, include its black citizens. Many times, when I was younger, I would wonder what black Americans wanted. I didn't know many black people. They were a mystery to me. Even so, it never occurred to me to ask what I wanted for them, what sort of society I dreamed of for us, and what I might do to try and get it. It's easy to imagine the sort of Martin Luther King we'd like to believe in, but difficult to grapple with the truth of him. In reality, Dr. King grew up in a society that hated him, and his reward for fame and bravery was jailing in the South, bugging by the FBI, assassination. If we imagine Dr. King as our family member, then we might quietly recognize that race riots around the nation were the minimum price we could pay for the death of such a man. What would you do if someone killed your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad? Dr. King would understand this desire for vengeance, certainly, but he would tell us anyway to love one another and die before hating our enemies. He wouldn't stop challenging us there. He would also require reflection on the ways in which we inadvertently participate in such violence, and on the ways in which many of us as white Americans daily pour gasoline on a burning house, all the while offended that some of our neighbors won't hurry over to dinner. It's tempting to remember only the dream and to forget the assassination that followed it. That is a trick that white people, like me, tend to play on ourselves. The dream is innocent and ideal and beautiful. The tragedy that follows and that follows daily in the form of voting restrictions, registration policies, and police brutality is a part of white society too. To realize and grapple with that is to begin to realize Dr. King's dream.